You want to know how the planet's doing? Ask those people at Pompeii who are frozen into position from volcanic ash how the planet's doing. Want to know if the planet's all right? Ask those people in Mexico City or Armenia or 100 other places buried under thousands of tons of earthquake rubble if they feel like a threat to the planet this week. How about those people in Kilauea, Hawaii, who build their homes right next to an active volcano and then wonder why they have lava in the living room? The planet will be here for a long, long, long time after we're gone, and it will heal itself, it will cleanse itself, because that's what it does. It's a self-correcting system. The air and the water will recover, the earth will be renewed, and if it's true that plastic is not degradable, well, the planet will simply incorporate plastic into a new paradigm, the earth plus plastic. The earth doesn't share our prejudice towards plastic. Plastic came out of the earth. The earth probably sees plastic as just another one of its children. Could be the only reason the earth allowed us to be spawned from it in the first place. It wanted plastic for itself. Didn't know how to make it. Needed us. Could be the answer to our age-old philosophical question, why are we here? Plastic. Assholes. So.
Now we know. Now we know the answer. Welcome back. You're listening to Just Right on CHRW 94.9 FM, where 519-661-3600 is the number to call if you want to join in the conversation. We've been hearing a lot about this concept that, as the green movement moves on, new concepts keep coming up almost weekly, and footprint was definitely one of those concepts. Got an article here, commentary by Michael Koren back in April 26. People matter more than planet, and I thought it was, there's a paragraph in here which basically gets to the point, and he says, here lies the point, he says. Life matters much, much more than the planet, which is merely a place on which humans live. We need to care for Earth not because of it, but because of us. Pure self-interest. If humanity did not exist, to hell with the planet. It's a means to an end. We're the end. The Earth is the means. Now, I know some people in the environmental movement would take offense at that, wouldn't they?
Well, the people who hate humanity.
And just as simple as that, end the conversation.
Well, those are those self-loathing individuals who believe that that ultimately every time man... I mean, look at the leader of the current Green Party right now. She gave a lecture, and I think it was 2006. Elizabeth May.
Yeah.
You can Google this. It's Killam Lecture, Killam. If you do that, Killam Lecture and Elizabeth May, you'll find this speech she gave a couple years ago. And in it, she basically starts with a quote in which she says, ever since man ate from the tree of knowledge, there's been no folly in which he hasn't engaged. The end. And the idea there, and it goes all the way through her lecture, is that, man, feeling so important, feeling that he's capable of commanding nature in any way at all, has screwed up the environment, and that's why we got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and that if we're going to get back into the Garden of Eden, which, by the way, she actually believes exists, she believes she knows the location of it, she says so in the lecture.
But the funny thing is...
But she says to get back in...
Why do you want to get back in? Isn't the general religious idea to get out of the Garden of Eden?
No, she thinks that the idea is we need to drop all pretense, we need to stop thinking we're capable of knowledge, we need to stop inventing, stop producing, stop changing the world as it was given to us, and instead return to these root-eating, tree-hugging, do-nothing, wait for God to lay it in your lap type individuals.
We need to adopt the principles of the Earth Charter to live with respect for all the community of life on this planet. The Earth Charter Principles. 1. Respect Earth and life in all its diversity. A. Recognize that all beings are interdependent and every form of life has value regardless of its worth to human beings.
As soon as
David Suzuki says the same things too. I've played his clips on the show here saying essentially the same thing.
It's wholly religious belief, not based in reason, completely irrational, and the thinking is man, being a rational animal, being the only animal that's rational, has destroyed or is destroying the earth, and what we need to do is be more like the animals.
We still depend on nature. We're a part of the natural world. Where do we think the air that we breathe is coming from? There isn't a great big factory or plant pushing out all of this air that we depend on? Where do you think your water comes from? Nature, when it rains on the soil, all of the fungi and bacteria and plant roots in the soil filter that water so that we can drink it. It's nature that provides our food and creates the soil. I think that we need to understand that we are still biological creatures. We're animals.
So that we can return to being babies in the Garden of Eden, and God will provide for us. We'll just pick berries, and, you know, lambs will lay down and give us their left leg to eat. Ridiculous, ridiculous.
That's the thing. It sounds so ridiculous to some people that they cannot bring themselves to believe that anyone's actually motivated by that kind of thing.
But they are. Quite
yeah,
literally.
I see it, and it's hard to avoid some of the associations because you hear it out of their own lips. Now, how does that relate to the footprint concept that they've got now? Because that seems to me to indicate less of a suicidal tendency than I want my share.
One.
Oh yeah, homicidal one. Yeah,
right.
You know, I want my equal share. Just amazing here. I couldn't believe this editorial. Paul Burton in the London Free Press. I know you don't get the Free Press where you are, but point of view: rich people leave their marks, and he says in here, we didn't really need a study to demonstrate what common sense already shows us. But the study's the first. He's talking about Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. But the study's the first to try to quantify our eco-footprints as they relate to income levels, basically saying that the more money you make, the bigger ecological footprint you leave. And he says we cannot have those doing the least damage stuck with most of the bill, and I see it already, you know. And then you see here in another article, Free Press, richer countries living off poor. And they're talking about the costs and causes of economic activity and about how the poorer countries are already suffering by a value of $3 trillion between 1961 and 2000, almost all caused by climate change, and it's our fault, right?
Right.
I mean, I read this stuff, and all I see here is make the rich pay.
That's exactly what you do see.
And so...
as though there are lots of billionaires out there, by the way. I mean, the rich, when they're talking about the rich, they're talking about people making $50,000 a year.
Oh, I know.
But
or anybody more than the zero
let's look
guy.
At this. I mean, let's look at this as a very important concept, and I don't think many people know about it. Most people, like myself originally, think that footprint's just kind of one of these new age terms that, you know, just recently came up, and it means, you know, how much are you consuming? Footprint actually is a technical term developed by a professor at UBC. He and another, I think it was his graduate student, put out a book, and I believe it was around 94, 96. It's no longer in print, unfortunately. I've tried to get it, and I have to get it used. But the idea of the footprint is this, that there are so many acres or so many square feet of productive earth on the globe, and then there are so many human beings. And so you take the percentage of productivity...
which is something they don't even want to believe in.
Right, they take the total... Well, remember, they're including man-made wealth in all of that, not just apples growing on trees, but cars growing in factories, okay? They say take all the wealth, divide it by the number of people, because that's the productivity, and they say as a result you should have 1.8 units, I can't remember what they call it, I think they call them global hectares, per person, that's all anybody is entitled to. In other words, the footprint, the global hectare, the 1.8 global hectare idea, is the idea that if you're consuming 1.8 global hectares, then you're a good person. You're at that zero level. You're not trying to go into the plus. You've gone from 0 up to 1.8. But if you go above 1.8, you're a sinner. You're evil. Even though you created that productivity, even though you are that productivity, you made that car, you made that wealth that he's consuming or averaging around the globe.
Right.
He said you're not entitled to it because everything is just a gift from Gaia, and everybody's entitled to an equal share. And those who believe they actually know something or actually produce something and they're therefore entitled to keep what they produce, those are the evil people, and we're within our rights to share the wealth. It's the only good thing. It's the only thing that's fair to Gaia, to Earth, to Mother Earth, and it's the only thing that will prevent them from destroying Mother Earth with their, toxic cars and etc. And so this footprint is now being taken by the likes of David Suzuki and etc. It's become a global term. It's used around the world. And just recently in Australia...
Now, why does it get accepted so quickly? Is it because everybody's of the same mind?
No, because it's gained this credence without anyone understanding what it is. And that unit, the global hectare, is effectively a unit that inherently is a communist unit. It says everyone's entitled to an equal share of what the earth provides. Of course, the earth isn't providing it. Man is.
Right.
Man's activity, man's productive activity is. But they don't agree that man. They just say it's all a gift from Gaia. So they think they're within their rights to say 1.8. Now, even if they don't believe it's a gift from Gaia, even if they're just old-fashioned Marxists who hate wealthy people, kill the rich, eat the rich, they'll hook onto this green crap as though it's actually science. And it's not science, it's a political measure, the global hectare. It's laden with political belief that you're entitled, as a matter of justice, to a certain chunk of all productivity. Now, recently in Australia, they actually did a website for children. And
I was going to bring that one up because I think you sent me a link to it. And when you sent me a link to it, I thought you were sending me a joke. I really did.
No,
and you said it was on the ABC network or website there in Australia.
Australian Broadcasting Corporation.
And I thought, well, I've heard of the American Broadcasting Corporation. Never heard of the Australian one. Is it the same thing? Is it legit? I couldn't believe it because I couldn't believe there'd be such a thing. But tell us some about what's on there. I've seen some of this myself.
Yeah. So here they have this tool, and how much of a pig are you? And so imagine there's 3 pigs.
To measure your footprint.
To measure your footprint, basically. And they've got 3 pigs. They've got sort of an average pig, and then they've got this tiny pig, and then they've got what you should be, the 1.8 pig, let's call it. I think those are the 3 pigs. You're one of the 3 pigs, and you're asked 11 questions. Now, it's obvious which questions are the green answers and which questions are the evil, you're a productive, consumptive type person answers. Mm-hmm. And so I went through the whole thing. First, I went through it answering honestly, and of course, at the very end, what happens, at each answer you give that's, you're productive and consumptive, your pig gets bigger. If you answer in a way that, you're less consumptive and you're less productive, well then, your pig gets smaller. Now, of course, me being a regular Western individual, my pig turned into this huge, absolutely massive, fanged brute, ugly, spewing green goo out of his mouth. And when you click the button at the end of the 11th question, you said, click here to find out how much of a pig, to find out how long you should live. No, pardon me, when you should die.
Yeah, that was a spin.
Find out when you should die. And I click the button, and it says you should die at age 1.8 years. In other words, you are consuming so much in 1.8 years of your life, you would have consumed your entire share of the globe's productivity. Never mind that I've been creating my own.
I did better than you. I got up to, I think, about 4 years or something like that. But you know what I thought was really interesting was the way they measured the CO2 output. And on one of the examples I did, I clicked on, how much I drive per year, et cetera, et cetera. And then it would give me a measurement of how much CO2 that produces. Then the next question is, did you pay for your own gas or did your employer pay for it, right? And if you say employer, I just clicked to see what would happen, all of a sudden the CO2 footprint goes right off the scale there, goes right up. I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. I just made the same drive with the same machine in the same distance, but if I pay for it myself, it's less of a footprint. If my employer pays for it, it's a footprint. And I'm thinking, well, what's the difference between those two options? If I pay for it myself, I'd have to take it out of my own salary, would have paid taxes on it, and it wouldn't have been a benefit. But it just shows you how the target isn't even anything to do with the environment. It is money.
Not only that, I mean, as a second test, what I did is I went through, and you can do this. It's still online, I believe. The ABC, I think it's called How Much of a Pig Are You or When Should You Die? Google it and you'll find it. But I answered every question the green way, except one.
Okay.
How much do you earn? And I put in my answer, which was a 6-digit answer, and that's the top bracket as far as they're concerned. And instantly, even though my pig had been getting smaller for every other question, I instantly turned into that big fang brute with the green goo. And blah, blah, blah. So just earning money, even though you're recycling and all this other stuff, makes you the bad guy, the evil, the biggest, fattest pig who should die at age 1. And you don't only die, by the way.
We sure hear it in the rhetoric.
But you don't just die on this. This is the thing. This is for kids.
Yeah.
You not only are told when you should die, which is horrific, you're telling a child that, but you explode into this thing, this pile of goo, intestines, blood, brains, eyeballs. And this is what the child sees when they see a sign that says you should die at age 1.8 years.
Unbelievable. You know, it's almost child abuse. We've got to take a quick break.
Yeah.
We'll come back right after this, and boy, time's running real fast on this. Get into some of the politics of it, some of the examples. We'll be right back after this.
So, the plastic is here. Our job is done. We can be phased out now. And I think that's really started already, don't you? I mean, to be fair, the planet probably sees us as a mild threat, something to be dealt with. And I'm sure the planet will defend itself in the manner of a large organism, like a beehive or an ant colony can muster a defense. I'm sure the planet will think of something. What would you do if you were the planet trying to defend against this pesky, troublesome species? Let's see. What might... viruses. Viruses might be good. They seem vulnerable to viruses. And viruses are tricky, always mutating and forming new strains whenever a vaccine is developed. Perhaps this first virus could be one that compromises the immune system of these creatures. Perhaps a human immunodeficiency virus, making them vulnerable to all sorts of other diseases and infections that might come along. And maybe it could be spread sexually, making them a little reluctant to engage in the act of reproduction. Well, that's a poetic note. And it's a start. And I can dream, can't I? See, I don't worry about the little things. Bees, trees, whales, snails. I think we're part of a greater wisdom than we will ever understand. A higher order. Call it what you want. You know what I call it? The big electron. The big electron. Whoa. 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 It doesn't punish. It doesn't judge at all. It just is. And so are we. For a little while. Thanks for being here with me for a little while tonight. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
My proposal is this. By the end of next year, America and other nations will set a long-term global goal for reducing greenhouse gases. To help develop this goal, the United States would convene a series of meetings of nations that produced most greenhouse gas emissions, including nations with rapidly growing economies like India and China.
Although the Bush Climate Plan is far superior than the Kyoto Protocol, it still begs the question, if the probability that increasing carbon dioxide will result in potentially tremendous benefits for mankind and the environment, why pursue the reduction of carbon dioxide at all? Could it be because it establishes a huge international bureaucracy which is not accountable to the citizens of the United States and the world?
That is very, very clear in these United Nations documents that they want to set up a regulatory structure that would affect every man, woman, and child on planet Earth. And all of the control would be headquartered in the United Nations. And if we take the more recent United Nations documents, it's going to be called the Trusteeship Council in the restructure of the United Nations that's occurring right now.
While these plans are being made for everyone else, those demanding that we make these sacrifices have no intention of making the same sacrifices themselves.
And isn't that always the way with sacrifice? Welcome back. You're listening to Just Right on CHRW 94.9 FM, where we will be with you for only a few more minutes. Paul, you're making a comment there while George Carlin was, I sort of felt that little tinge there too when he was talking about, that nature doesn't judge, and it's almost got a green sentiment to it. I noticed you were commenting.
Well, I mean, nature doesn't judge in any intelligent sense, but nature certainly has rules. And we either follow them or we die. Nature, to be commanded, must be obeyed. And in that sense, nature is the ultimate judge. But this idea that there's a big electron and that somehow anything we do to change it is bad, right? Or that we're even not incapable of changing any aspect of it or reconfiguring it, I think that's a little wrong-headed. It's actually a green sentiment. But you were getting into this, the idea of the politics and the economics,
right?
And ultimately, And never forget. I mean, that last clip you were listening to, where China and India, well, they don't want to participate. They want to be productive. They want to create CO2, but they don't want to. But they want the U.S. and Canada to cut their CO2. Well, you know,
assuming CO2 is even a problem,
which it isn't. But I mean, but they want that redistribution of wealth that they believe was stolen in the past, and that is now earned or to be owed to these developing nations.
And the idea at Kyoto was this. We in the industrialized world, the rich countries, have created the problem in the first place. We're the ones that used all this coal and oil and gas and added too much carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So it was up to us to at least show the rest of the world, look, we can't keep doing that indefinitely. We're going to stop growing. We've said there are limits. We can't just keep adding more. And we will show that we're going to bring our emissions down. If we don't do that, then why should India or China or Indonesia or any of these countries who didn't make the problem in the first place, why should they pay any attention to us?
It's the same old cult of zero, the same old cult of you got something without earning it, because earning it's not possible, because competence isn't possible, because nobody's more competent than me, none of us are competent. We all must share. None of us are competent to independently succeed. And if you think you have, then you're just a sinner who needs to be dealt with. And when you look at these carbon taxes and carbon trading systems, that's exactly what they are. They're going to put a gun to the head of the productive and say, gimme what you produced or what you think you produced.
So Stephen Harper was right before he was Prime Minister.
He was right before he was Prime Minister, and I think he and George Bush are right now to say, you know what? If China and India don't want to get into this this game, then we're not either. And I think they're right, not because it's right for everyone to do it, but because they know darned well that China and India will never do it. Because it's a redistribution scheme, it's shallow, and they know that if everyone had to do it, nobody would do it. It would defeat the whole purpose, which is just something for nothing losers trying to defeat all of their bad feelings about being incompetent losers.
Now, you know, just to emphasize, because here in London we have this meeting coming up on Tuesday, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing from the Council of Canadians, who will now have an opportunity.
Incompetent losers.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I happen to have in my hand right here, from the London City Hall minutes, the petition that was sent in by the Council of Canadians under Cory Morningstar with her covering letter. And I highlighted so many of the comments that were in the petition that just speak to what really is concerning them. And interestingly, in her front cover page, I don't know if she'll stress this at the meeting on Tuesday, she points out that health and climate change are top priorities, but they talk about the drive-through being a totally symbolic gesture. It's symbolic of the movement. But listen to this in the covering letter. This is interesting. You know, we're supposed to be talking about the environment, but listen to what they're talking about. Profits before children, or children before profits. Right. Convenience before children, or children before convenience. You know, it's frightening where the whole emphasis is. And I look through all the comments. Drive-throughs are not worth the convenience. Nobody needs drive-throughs. It's all versus need versus anything a little bit better.
It's
or convenience.
All wasteful.
Right.
It doesn't bring you happiness. It's not necessary. You know, and they posit everything as against children. Where was that concern for children when they put up that absolutely disgusting, "Are you a pig? When should you die?" They're fine with terrorizing children, but they don't want you to buy them. Yeah, but don't buy those children any bottled water. You know.
Right. And it's interesting too, because I see that there is some resistance coming now to the whole green religion, and I see them already starting to take their foot off of that.
Yeah, they'll find the
movement.
next crisis.
Well, I think the next one's going to be, among others, healthcare, because that's a tremendous place to go into. Water. You're going to see that. They're already, Maud Barlow's proclaiming herself the champion of water, which is just laughable.
The globe, with 2/3 of its surface covered with water, is suddenly going to have a water crisis, a water shortage that can't be overcome with desalination plants or anything like that. Yeah.
And what's interesting is, even in the same comments justifying the ban on drive-thrus, and you'd think everyone here would have signed it for the same reason, namely something to do with the environment. I would say a lot of them are not about that. They're all about self-indulgence, selfishness, convenience, that kind of thing. Right. But the other thing you see a lot is unhealthy lifestyle, obesity problem, people using terms like lard butts, you know, calling the people who go to...
That's that hatred.
It's a complete...
hatred of the competent for being competent because they continually remind them of how incompetent they are.
And listen to this comment here. Drive-thrus are not a good source for nutritional foods and cause a great deal of idling pollution. Two very big negatives in this already negative capitalistic society. And there you go. It's just the attack is on capitalism, on happiness,
values, industrial activity, productive activity, rational activity.
And
hate it all.
They themselves admit, via Cory Morningstar, that it's all symbolic.
Absolutely.
The whole drive-through thing is a symbolic thing, and here we are, we're wasting all our time on Cory Morningstar and the Council of Canadian Symbolism.
And we're electing these people to office who have no value to offer, who don't believe values are possible, and who are there, therefore, to do nothing other than destroy the productive. And that's what Council's doing here in London.
Well, I think, Paul, you've helped us discover a bit about basically what all politics is run by. It's not just the green movement, and I think we're going to see green change its color soon to some other issue. But that's where we'll have to leave it, folks. And that's it for today. And I hope you'll join us again next week when we'll continue our journey in the right direction. Until then, be right, stay right, do right, act right, and think right. And thanks for being with us, Paul. We'll have you back again.
Thank you.
Take care.
Fade into color, and color into black and white. Under the bedclothes, everything will be alright.
So I've been working on my tan. I don't tan well, all right? I went to a tanning salon. I was there for like an hour. I didn't fall asleep, but people were walking by going, boy, he looks good. And I realized I'm in a funeral home, all right? So I get up. People are fainting and screaming, you know.